Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports, and as always, I'm your host, Eric Asher. We got a great panel for you tonight. Larry Holder of NOLA.com, and of course John DeShazier of NewOrleansSaints.com, and of course the Pelicans radio analyst. Over the next hour, we're going to discuss the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, the LSU Tigers, and the Tulane Green Wave, and really looking forward to getting together with these guys and talking a little sports. And guys, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, first of all, let's get started. Larry, tell the folks a little bit about what you're doing right now. Of course, we know you're at NOLA.com and some of the great stuff you guys are doing over the paper.
Right, obviously covering the Saints on a daily basis. Myself, Catherine Terrell, of course, and Jeff Duncan has been jumping in, doing a lot more Saints coverage than he normally would be, and of course, you name it, everything, all the time at NOLA.com and at Times-Picayune. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Larry Holder. And former radio personality, I'll just say that. Me and you used to share the airwaves a lot. But
good times.
Yeah, good times for sure. But now JD has I'm not going to say he's taken over for me because he's probably keeping a little more classy than maybe I did. But,
well,
you know.
Probably so.
Probably so, exactly.
John, you're a man of many hats now in terms of what you're doing. Tell the folks a little bit about it.
I'm writing for NewOrleansSaints.com, and so we're doing features and videos, and anybody who looks at NewOrleansSaints.com is probably sick of seeing my face, but hey, this is it, folks. and I also get to do the Pelicans radio gig, the play-by-play for the Pelicans game. So, yeah, it's a busy time in life, but I'm looking forward to some downtime at some point in time. But
when?
Well, you know what? Now old folks from the country where I'm from, they say, I can rest when I die. So I guess I'm going to rest when I die. But it's good to be busy. It's good to have a job in this economy, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, for the record, I want to tell you folks, if you have not listened to the radio broadcast with Sean Kelly and John DeShazier doing the Pelican games, you got to check it out. They do a fantastic job, and I always look forward to listening to the broadcast. And congratulations, John. You made a great transition from print to radio. Yeah,
I kind of, there are days where I have a little withdrawal. I see those guys, kind of slaving and beating deadline and those kind of things. And now I'll say this, all of them beat me out of the press box Monday night, which, I'm not quite accustomed to that, especially, I used to be like the first guy out, but, now I got to readjust and recalibrate. So, but yeah, I'd still do a little bit of writing, not nearly as much as I used to do with the Picayune, but it's still enjoyable.
Yep, no doubt. Guys, let's get started. Saints are 4-0. The fan base is excited, but again, I think this is going to be, the next two games are going to be a real barometer for this team going forward, going up to Chicago and then following that going up to New England. And I guess the fan base right now really concerned about the offensive line. And Larry, we'll start with you first. Your thoughts on the offensive line, how they played thus far the first quarter of the season.
Well, I think it shows you that there are concerns. It shows you that this team can actually improve. And at times, they probably even feel fortunate that they are 4-0 because they definitely have warts. They're not as a perfect product. And the offensive line, I say, pass protection-wise, they probably had their best game this past week against Miami. But the run game, every week you see the numbers, and it's not just running backs. It's not just the offensive line. But the offensive line, to me, is certainly struggling. You look up the gut. You see an all-pro like Jari Evans, he's struggling. I think personally, and he's told me this even at the start of the season, he's been battling injuries and still trying to get kind of his legs under him. And I don't know when he's going to be healthy because how do you get healthy when you got to keep playing?
Right.
And so Brian De La Puente,
the back as well, right?
Right. The hamstring, and he was dealing with the back during preseason. But then you look at Brian De La Puente, he's not playing as well. And I think Ben Grubbs, he's done well in pass protection, but man, you've seen a couple of them even highlighted when he was basically pancaked on one running play. But they got a lot of money tied up in that middle, and that's where the breakdowns have really been on the offensive line.
John?
Yeah, well, I agree. Protection has been been the issue. And, Drew Brees being on the ground 12 times and being hit numerous times besides that, that's not what the Saints are all about. That's not what they want. And the interior is generally the strength of that offensive line because Brees is a shorter quarterback. He's 6 foot. He needs to have that, that clear path right in front of him. So they hadn't done a very good job of that. Now, the flip side is, they're saying, okay, defenses are playing a little bit more man-to-man. They're playing them a little bit tighter, and he's having to hold on to the ball for a heartbeat longer. But still, holding on to it a little bit longer. But he's taking a lot of punishment. He's getting sacked, and he's taking those licks, and that's the last thing you want for your quarterback.
Guys, a lot of talk about the scheme changing under Brett Engels. Have you guys, is that the truth? First of all, you guys are there on a day in, day out basis covering this team. Is that the truth? Is it a scheme or is it just a physical deal right now with this offensive line?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of both. I mean, I still think they're trying to work their way out through the scheme. And you also have a new running back who's actually been pretty productive when he has gotten some carries, Kyrie Robinson. And you did see them successfully run the football more in the second half, which I know they'd love to do that in the first half, but it just hasn't happened. But, I mean, the scheme, they're certainly still learning. I mean, Zach Strief mentioned during training camp how this team basically had to learn 35 new running plays, and that's a big deal from a team that's so used to pounding in and you staying within, off guard, off tackle. Yes. They're trying to shift the line, and I mean, when Jari Evans is hurt, that's a problem. And when you have some other guys who aren't as accustomed to this, that's been a problem. But to me, it's something I still feel like they can figure this thing out. I mean, they're not totally abandoning what they used to do, but and this zone scheme is something they did in the past. They kind of got away from it. So it's not completely new, but it is certainly new and a new philosophy, and they're still obviously working the kinks out.
Is it a less aggressive scheme, John, the zone blocking scheme? Do you think they're having problems with the scheme right now?
Well, it does seem to be a little bit of an adjustment to the scheme. Obviously, they're not running as well as they want to. Now, they're getting the attempts, and they're continuing to stay with it. They're getting to 20 to 25, but, it's not as effective as they want it to be. And, I don't know if it's physical or if it's a scheme, but, if you're changing schemes, obviously, you've got to readjust. Now, the flip side of it is, I think they're making do with the running game and those long handoffs, which are the swing passes and the screen passes. And I think that basically is substituting out for the run game until they kind of settle in and get a better grasp of it. It helps to be ahead, and that way you can run the ball a little bit more effectively to eat some time off the clock and kind of, get into a rhythm. But certainly, they're having trouble right now running the football in the first half.
Well, JD, it's funny because the last two conference calls we've had with opposing coaches talk about Joe Philbin, and then this past week with Mark Trestman, they basically said, so what if they're not balanced? If their passing game is working and Drew Brees has been on fire, I mean, go with it. And, it's funny because when you mention balance, I mean, they're not going to get balance yardage-wise. You want to see a little bit of balance snap-wise, but what if Drew Brees throws the ball 40 times a game and you run it 22? For them, that is balance.
Yeah, that's what they do. I mean, and my good friend Herm Edwards would say, you play to win the game. And so they're doing what's necessary to win the game. And so sometimes it's going to be imbalanced like that. He might have to put it up 45 times, and you only get the 23 rushes. But the end result is you win, and then you work on the run game the next week to see if you can rectify that situation. So that's the way they're going to play. And they've changed the scheme a bit when they've had to. They went a little heavy with Bryce Harris.
At times, we had running backs chipping. We had tight ends chipping. They max protected a few times in the second half. So they've made some adjustments to try to help protect Brees as well.
Oh, well, and they have to, because as JD was just talking about, Drew Brees is getting hit way too often. I go back to a play where you wouldn't think he would get crushed, but I'll go back to the Arizona game where it was the 7-yard touchdown pass to Jimmy Graham, a quick slant. And what happened was Carlos Dansby comes in unguarded up the gut on a blitz. He took a 3-step drop, and he got pummeled. If he takes a 4-step drop, he's getting sacked, and there's no touchdown, and who knows what happens. So it's something they are certainly working on. I think they've gotten better this week. I think the pass protection was spot on. There's a reason why Drew was so good, 30 of 39. There's a reason why no interceptions, 4 touchdowns. I mean, it definitely improved. It's the best pass protection they've seen. So, and Chicago, we're going into this game, they're a little beat up. Henry Melton, one of their big-time defensive tackles, is injured. out for the year, and Julius Peppers, you're going to focus in on him. So maybe they're getting all on the right track to at least protect Drew Brees. So if you can at least do that and protect him, then if the running game works, it works. If it doesn't, you go with what's gotten you to 4-0.
Yeah, and this might be the week. One, Chicago doesn't get after the quarterback well. They've only got 6 sacks, so we know they're not getting to the quarterback that much. Then on top of that, their best corner, Peanut Tillman, did not practice again today. So we're not exactly sure what his status will be on Sunday. But if he doesn't practice on Wednesday and Thursday, he might be a little bit iffy for Sunday. And if you can get him off the field, certainly that works to your advantage, and they don't get to the quarterback so much. Now they might decide, this Sunday, well, we might have to bring more pressure. Well, that might play into the Saints' hands because, they might take a sack or two. You don't want Drew Brees to get beat up.
No doubt.
But you might have to sacrifice a play or two to get what you want out of a blitz.
Yep. Guys, talk about Brees and how he's performed so far. NFC Player of the Week after his performance against the Dolphins. It's funny. On the radio show, we've had people that have called that have questioned his arm strength. All you have to do is look at the touchdown pass in the second quarter, I believe what it was, to Sproles to see that the guy obviously has not lost any velocity on the football.
Right. I think it's people seeing his age and people thinking, oh, he's finally going to be, at some point he's going to start his decline, and it looks like he underthrew Kenny Stills once in a game. He underthrew Robert Meach. Give me a break. The reason why Drew Brees is actually getting this team to 4-0 and still being highly productive through the beatings is because he's getting the football to them. So, yeah, I don't buy that. I think he's back on track. I mean, having Sean Payton back certainly helps. He's not thinking as much out there just because he doesn't have to, wonder, if this play is going to work. That him and Sean are two peas in a pod. And so, look, he's playing outstanding. There's a reason why people are mentioning him for the number 2 spot as an MVP right now. Yes. We know who number 1 is, Peyton Manning, but he's playing just as well as he really started off this couple seasons ago.
Yeah, Drew's problem is he's played so well for so long that people take for granted that he's just at a certain level. And if he doesn't play to that level, if he throws for, 292 yards and a touchdown and an interception, all of a sudden it's what's wrong with the guy? Yes. What's going on with him? And we don't know all the factors that go in. Now he comes back and throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, and everybody's, kind of parading him around the room. Well, he's more that guy than he is the 292-yard guy. I mean, but he's raised the level of expectation so high that when he doesn't have a 125 quarterback rating, everybody's looking at him saying, well, what's going on?
Yeah, no doubt. Jimmy Graham, obviously having a great year this year. It is a contract year for Jimmy Graham, and there's a lot of discussion on how much he will be paid ultimately. Guys, I'll throw it to you. And John, let's start with you this time. John, your thoughts on Jimmy Graham, how he's performed, and ultimately when you look at the landscape of how players are being paid now, what's the ceiling on Jimmy Graham in terms of his next contract?
Well, let me say this. If I didn't have the job that I have right now, which I love, I would love to be Jimmy's agent. Because Jimmy's gonna get paid, and but his production demands that. And I think he's gonna get paid whatever the highest paid tight end in NFL history, blah blah blah. He's gonna far surpass that because his production far surpasses that. Because this guy is the new age freak. There's something. He's different than anything you've seen, and his production is such that he has to be compensated that way. If Rob Gronkowski was the guy, and if Aaron Hernandez got what he got, and if Antonio Gates was the previous guy, well, this guy is better than all those guys, and he can't be. What coverage are you going to put on him to stop him? There is nothing you can do with him. And now Drew Brees is saying, basically he's one of those guys where he still has weaknesses, but he has so few of them. And his weaknesses are becoming strengths to where he might not have any holes in his game in another couple of years.
Wow.
Well, it's funny because Calvin Johnson might have a weakness. He might not want to run block, but guess what? I view Jimmy Graham as a Calvin Johnson type player. I view him as a Larry Fitzgerald type player. When's the last time the Saints have had a skill position player? We talk about how much Drew Brees throws the football around and spreads it out. Well, this is by far his number 1 target. He's more dynamic than what Marcus Colston gave you because he's been Drew Brees' number 1 target for such a long time. But Jimmy Graham, I think he is such a playmaker that forget Gronk money. We were talking before the show, Mike Wallace, what did he get, 6 years, $60 million?
6 years.
I laugh at that contract if I'm Jimmy Graham. So I'm thinking if I'm his agent, I'm going after Calvin Johnson money. I'm going after Larry Fitzgerald money. Is he going to get that? Probably not, but is he going to get somewhere close to that? Does he deserve it? I think absolutely. And so the Saints, they're in salary cap issues going into next season.
Yes.
Time to start shedding. They might want to give Ben Grubbs a call. Look, you're making a lot of money. You're not playing as well. You might have to take a pay cut. And some other guys, they're going to be
Bunkley?
Well, Broderick Bunkley. And then you look at contracts like Will Smith and Roman Harper. Those are going to be cut off as a way. But you've got to find a way to get Jimmy Graham paid. And I know there's an argument, franchise tag, is he a wide receiver? Just don't even test that. Give him what he deserves, and he deserves that kind of money.
You get. I mean, and then he's in that position where you can move him around. I mean, if defenses decide we want to take him away at tight end. Okay, well maybe if he's on the line, you might be able to do some. Well, they split him out wide. And if you get in the red zone, what are you going to do? You just throw it high. What are you going to do? I mean, there is no answer for him. He's a guy who is so valuable, and he's got such chemistry going with Drew Brees right now that, if anything would happen to him, I'm sure Drew Brees would be calling people up and saying, hey, this guy's we got to have him. There are a lot of people we can do without. Sure. There are a lot of things we can do, but he's we have to have guy.
You don't want a situation like Carl Nicks. You don't want a situation where at the end you find out, well, maybe he wanted to stay. If you would have came out with that original offer, and you get into a situation where, again, hindsight, you're saying, wow, maybe we should have given that original offer, that best offer first, and got that out the way.
Yeah, he's never going to get to that point. It might be a situation where maybe you have to franchise him until you work on something long term, just to make sure that.
Kind of like what happened with Drew.
Exactly.
Agreed.
I mean, it might be that exact situation, but Jimmy Graham. If Jimmy Graham goes somewhere, Jimmy Graham isn't going anywhere.
I agree. Jimmy Graham is not going anywhere. It doesn't matter. It's just like, really, Drew Brees is going somewhere? No, they are not going anywhere. And look, if there's one player Drew Brees might say, why don't you shift some money? Maybe I'll take like an extension on top of my contract, and you could spread some of my money out a little bit more, and to make this happen, Drew will do just about anything to make this happen.
Well, guys, the way quarterbacks are being paid right now, by the time you get to the back end of Drew Brees' contract, it's going to be a bargain.
Yeah.
I mean, it really will be. I mean, you look at some of the money that's being thrown around the quarterbacks right now. I know people are looking at that contract going, wow, it balloons at the end, but honestly, it could be a bargain. 504-866-3200 is the phone number. We always welcome your phone calls to our program. John DeShazier of NewOrleansSaints.com, and of course, the radio analyst for the New Orleans Pelicans, and Larry Hull of NOLA.com are our guests. And guys, the biggest surprise of this season is the play of the defense. And I tell you what, you get a lead with this, with the offense, with this defense, and those guys seem to, again, just turn it on. Larry, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on the defense, and when you were in training camp, did you see this coming?
Yes. Of course not. No, I didn't see this coming. It's funny. I remember going back to, and unfortunately for him, he tore his ACL, Victor Butler. And I remember he was fired up about this defense. Of course, he came over because of Rob Ryan, and he says, look, we might be able to be a leader in all these defensive categories. And literally, it wasn't me, check the tape. All media members were laughing at him.
I was laughing at the studio.
And he actually even laughed.
Right.
And look, this defense, they're buying in. And I remember a lot of people saying, well, Rob Ryan had this complicated defense in Dallas. Well, guess what? It is not complicated in New Orleans. He's going with the personnel that he has available, and that means he's playing a four-man front. It's basically a 4-2-5. And these young, athletic, hungry defensive linemen have really done a difference being able to get to the pass rusher without blitzing. And then the back end, they've been able to make plays and create turnovers. So, yeah, Eric, I saw it coming. Absolutely not. I did not see it. I did not see it coming.
Nostradamus. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, you watch it, and you go back to the preseason game, Kansas City, and some of those games where the opposition scored fast and a long touchdown drive, and it's like, oh man, this could be bad. But they adjust immediately, and they've done that during the regular season also. I mean, these guys, as Larry just mentioned, they cover well, they get after the quarterback, and they're not having to get after the quarterback by bringing excessive amounts of pressure on blitzes. Yes. And if you can do that, you got it whipped. Now, who knew they were going to be giving up 13 points a game or whatever it is? I mean, who would have seen that coming? I mean, you can't possibly see that coming after the way the yards were just gained against them last season. But certainly, I mean, these guys are hungry, they're young, they're no names, they got a chip on their shoulder, and I don't know what Rob Ryan is saying in those meeting rooms, but whatever it is, it's like feeding hungry guys raw meat. I mean, whatever it is, it's working.
Well, they seem very comfortable with the scheme. I mean, being able to make plays, not trying to think it through. Last year with Spagnuolo, they seemed to be trying to think before they reacted. Under this system, they seem to be reacting and being able to adjust on the fly.
Right, and that's the thing. It's not something complicated. It really just isn't. Maybe they'll pull a stunt here and there. Really, when they are successful rushing the quarterback, it's not on blitzes. You look at Ryan Tannehill's 4 sacks. None of them were on a blitz.
No.
They only blitzed on Ryan Tannehill dropbacks. They only blitzed 5 times the whole game. That's because they don't have to. Because you look at Junior Gillette, you look at Cam Jordan, Akeem Hicks, and John Jenkins, and then they're getting a little healthier. They got a rotation with Tyron Walker and Glenn Foster.
Yes.
They're more fresh, and they're really getting after the quarterback, and that is helping someone like Malcolm Jenkins actually play better. Remember, he was basically one of the whipping boys last year. And now he fits all of a sudden.
Well,
Imagine
he's
that.
covering now,
right?
but it's a lot
Imagine
easier
that.
to cover.
Yeah. He's not some bum like people were trying to make him out last year. Yeah. And then, of course, the corners, Keenan Lewis, Jabari Greer, both are playing solid. I mean, it's that group of corners, those 2 guys, probably the best corners we've seen under Sean Payton, 1-2 in the starting lineup.
And you can't discount what Vaccaro's been able to do as a rookie as well.
Yeah, he's adjusted the whole thing. Really smart as a rookie. But yeah, I'm with like, it's wind him up, go get him, and these guys are playing fast, they're playing hard, and I don't know how scaled down it is, but it seems like they're just playing a lot faster and they're being a lot more aggressive. And you hear Rob Ryan say, he said something, I think it was last week. He was like, "Oh, so they got a 4-yard run. So what? I've given up yards before. They don't mind the yards. They're trying to keep you off the scoreboard.
Yes.
They're trying to keep you out of the end zone. So you can get yards, they'll give up some things, and then they'll tighten up on you, and they'll take everything away from you."
Well, and look, you guys have mentioned it. You guys have written about it. Leading pressure with 4 down linemen, playing more of a 4 down lineman than again the 3-4 that we thought we'd see, and more success again with rushing the passer with 4 down linemen than when they blitz.
Right, exactly. And that's something that everyone thought Rob Ryan was going to come in blitz happy. And it's funny when you go and watch some national shows and they'll say, "Oh, this 3-4 scheme's great. They're blitzing." I'm like, dude, you're not watching what anyone's watching, because they are doing it with the 4-man rush. And I think that is more impressive than anything else. And I think a lot of that, goes to just the talent they have. I think they trust the young talent that they have. How many times have we seen young talent not be used, and they're using these veteran guys and that sort of thing? And you also can't discount just what Curtis Lofton's been doing, and even David Hawthorne is much improved than what we saw last year. So it's 1 through 11 on that whole defense. Look, they're really making some marks, and you also throw in even some backups. Raphael Bush is playing well in the absence of Roman Harper, and he saw a lot of time in training camp.
Yes.
You knew he was going to play a lot, and he's really become more than just a special teams guy. He's really been a defensive guy through the last couple of weeks.
I would agree.
Yeah, it's amazing what they're able to get out of guys who really don't have a name, like Glenn Foster, an undrafted rookie. These kinds of guys, they're able to get them, put them out there. Jay Richardson, who hadn't been in the league in a couple of years, and then he gets cut on the last cut, and then he sits home for a week, and then they bring him back, and he's still in shape, and he's ready to play. It's amazing what they've been able to get out of unconventional players. These aren't first-round picks and second-round picks and those kinds of guys. These are guys who are really, really hungry to show that they belong in the league.
504-866-3200. Let's head to the phone lines. John DeShazier of NewOrleansSaints.com and the radio analyst on the New Orleans Pelicans radio broadcast, as well as Larry Holder of NOLA.com are our guest. To Corey in New Orleans. Corey, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
How y'all doing? My question was about John Zillman. They got him on a short-term disability, I think, IR. What is the chances that they keep John Zillman or release him? And another question about Eric Gordon. What's the chance of him finishing the contract out with the Pelicans?
Don't get me started on Eric Gordon, because I don't have very nice things to say about him. But as far as Vilma's concerned, I think at this point, where does he fit? I mean, I've really been wondering because he's on the verge of being able to come back after. Really, he'll be able to come back after the bye week. They play 6 weeks. He would be eligible to come back in that bye week, but of course they're on a bye. So
yes.
He would be eligible to come back off of that list and practice, and yet he would have to sit out 8 games or 8 weeks, something like that. But where does he fit? I'm not really sure, honestly, where he fits. And is he fully healthy? I'm not sure of that either. So maybe they would like to play him where they would put David Hawthorne. But I'm not 100% sure where he fits. I don't think they release him. To me, if he's not ready to go, they might just put him on IR for the entire season. They don't want to cut ties. I mean, he's been very loyal to this team. But to me, I don't know where he fits right now. I'm gonna pass the rest on to Eric Gordon to the Pelicans extra because I'm not sold on that.
Well, first with Vilma, if he's healthy, he's going to play.
Okay.
And he's gonna step in and he's going to play. And I think he's going to contribute because he was, in that position starting, in David Hawthorne. So I think if he's healthy, that's a big if.
If he's healthy, I agree.
That's a big if. If he's healthy, he's going to play. With Eric, look, Corey, EG is going to play this year, and he's going to play well. And he's going to play well because, one, he's got a point guard in Drew Holiday. 2, he's got great competition at his position, whether it's between him and Drew Holiday flip-flopping or Tyreek Evans, who I know Monty Williams wants to bring off the bench, but if necessary, he can bring him in and start him. There's Anthony Morrow also. So there's no greater motivator than competition. Plus, the guy can flat play. Now, this is a situation where he's going to be out for, a couple of weeks and everything, and it's a conditioning thing, and he comes back, has surgery over the off season, and everybody looks and as soon as Monty Williams says Eric's going to have to miss a couple of weeks, everybody kind of rolls their eyes. Well, this is really a natural thing. He hadn't been able to work at all, so he's got to get into some type of shape before he can play. But I'm telling you, I'd be shocked, and maybe I'm crazy. I'd be shocked if he doesn't play 65, 70 games this year because I just think. And I don't know. I'm not inside of him. I know he says the right things, but I think he genuinely sees something in this team, and I think he genuinely wants to play, and especially he wants to play with Tyreek Evans and Drew Holiday. I
agree 100% with everything you just said. I really do. I just think it's the difference of personnel right now with the Pelicans are going to motivate him to want to get on the court. And look, if not, you've got enough talent on this team that ultimately.
And that's the beauty. That's the beauty. Even if he's hurt or even if he doesn't want to play, it doesn't cripple you now because you have depth, you have guys who can play, and you don't really – there is no singular injury, I don't believe, that would just totally wreck this team outside of Drew Holiday.
Agreed.
Drew Holiday is the linchpin, and Drew can ball. And if Drew's on the court, they're going to be fine. I think they can – you don't want Anthony Davis to be lost. But if he were, you could probably maintain for some games. But I think Drew Holiday is the one guy you cannot afford to lose.
I'm waiting for them to go Josh Freeman, and then all of a sudden, when he decides to just chill and make all of his money again, I'm just waiting for like Eric Gordon. He never had a knee injury. Well, I'm not sold on Eric Gordon. I'm not going to say he's going to play 60 games. I'm just not sold on the guy. If they have all this talent, then win without him and see what you can get. But I'm not going to be sold on this guy. Sorry, JD.
I'm just saying, 65 games. Mark my words. We'll come back at the end of this.
We will have to come back.
It is on tape now. It is on tape. That is for sure. We got it on tape. Before we head to our break, let's head to Gil on the West Bank. Gil, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hi, you guys. I'm really enjoying the show. It's your insights are incredible. I don't want to change the subject, but I've been dying to ask somebody about Marcus Colston and his hands. He seems to be catching everything that comes his way now, and that's got to be a change from what happened earlier. And I'm just wondering, do you think Sean Payton has something to do with it, or what's making Marcus so great now?
I wouldn't say Sean Payton have anything to do with it. I wouldn't say. I know a lot of people say, well, they missed Curtis Johnson. They didn't forget how to catch the football. I honestly think he's not seeing maybe as much tight coverage and people aren't focusing on him, and maybe it's just something he worked on in the offseason. But to me, I think he's always reliable, and last year was an anomaly for a lot of players. Yeah. I mean, even Jimmy Graham struggled. He was hurt, but I think last year it's hard to judge anyone other than Steve Spagnuolo from last year with anything else. So yeah, he's definitely been able to catch balls, but it gets contagious. I mean, when Jimmy Graham Rams not dropping passes. The Saints have done such a great job not dropping passes. But I think Colston, he's never going to be all the way healthy. I think he's just been beat up a lot throughout his career. But I think he's really in a groove with Drew Brees. And I'm not going to say he's the third option because at times he's not. But teams aren't as keyed in on him as maybe they normally would, and it's
because
making life and Sproles.
Yes,
it's making life a little easier for him, and he's definitely when you need a first down, you're throwing it to you can rely on Marcus Colston, and he's been reliable.
Yeah, I'm always surprised when Colston doesn't catch it. So I've always thought he had great hands. I know when he goes through spates where he might have a drop or two. With him, you never know if it's just a lack of concentration or if it's injury or something, because he's a guy, he would never tell you if something was wrong. You would never know. And he's that kind of guy. He's quiet. He keeps to himself. He's not necessarily he's not a media darling. He's not going to do many interviews. He'll do them, but I mean, it's almost like twisting. It's almost like twisting an arm. He's just that guy. He doesn't have to have that attention. So when he's not performing well, I always think it's something more than just an average drop or anything. Now, granted, Lance Moore's got the best hands that I've seen in this organization maybe ever, or I put him in the Eric Martin category if you got to put him somewhere in a category. But I mean, I certainly think that Colston's hands are fabulous.
Final question before we head to break. Saints head up to Soldier Field to take on the Chicago Bears, a grass field. The weather should be nice, but they are kind of stepping up in class here. Larry, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on this game coming up on Sunday.
I know the Bears are turnover happy, and that's one thing I know they're going to try to do. And JD mentioned it earlier. We don't know about Charles Tillman. That's an injury that we're wondering about. Also, Brandon Marshall hasn't practiced these last 2 days. That's obviously Jay Cutler's gigantic weapon, him and Matt Forte. But that I mentioned Matt Forte. That's something they've got to slow him down. They'll use him in the pass game. They'll use him in the run game, and the Saints, if there's one flaw in defense, they've been allowed to give up some yardage.
Especially off tackle. Right,
and so a lot of it, sometimes that's just being over aggressive and trying to get to the quarterback. But look, I think this is their best test so far. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And there's always something funky that goes on in Chicago with this team, and Drew Brees even mentioned it. So it's going to be a huge test for the Saints, and there's a reason why the Bears are a 1-point favorite going into it.
Yeah, the Saints just frankly haven't played well in Chicago, and some of that is I think some of that might have to do with the track. Generally they've played there generally in December, when it's cold and it's snowy and it's rainy and the field is basically mud. So maybe you get a better track right now. But the Bears are a pretty good team, and that has a lot to do with it too. And that cover two that Lovie Smith put in, that Mark Trestman left in, there's a reason they keep playing that defense. They play it extremely well. But again, if Charles Tillman isn't in it, that's one of the guys who makes it happen for them. I mean, they've got, I think, 8 picks or so, something. I mean, no, they've got more than 8 picks.
Well, they lead the NFL in turnovers.
Yeah, they've got 14 turnovers. I think maybe it's 11 picks, but it's ridiculous the way they're able to get the ball out. So I think you can actually get some plays on them because they're going to go after the football. And it's not all because one guy's holding you up and the second guy comes in to strip it. They're jumping passing routes, they're jumping lanes, they're going to go after the ball. So maybe you can trick them, and maybe you can get some plays against them, maybe some double moves or something like that. But that track, generally in December, has been awful.
Treacherous.
Awful, but it might be a little bit better. Even though it's supposed to rain this weekend, it might be a little bit better on Sunday. And Drew Brees, as much as said it, look, the Saints are going to do what they do. They're going to throw the ball. Right. They're going to do what they do, and they're going to see if you can stop it. So we'll see, one strength against the other.
I actually look for Pierre Thomas to have a big game on Sunday. Had a tough game against the Dolphins. He plays well in Chicago, plays well on that track. I look for PT to turn it around this week up at Soldier Field. Let's take our break. This is Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We got a great panel for you tonight. John DeShazier of NewOrleansSaints.com, and of course the radio analyst for the New Orleans Pelicans, and Larry Holder of NOLA.com. We take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little LSU Tigers, Tulane Green Wave, and of course we're not going to forget about John's Pelicans as well. All that coming up on Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. Now, we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking.
Viking. Red state. Blue state. Vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown. Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live
our families,
united.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Cox Channel 14, Charter Channel 11 and 711, AT&T Channel 32 and 1032, Dish TV, DirecTV, and over-the-air broadcast on Channel 32.
You know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Hi, we're Ola High, and you're watching WLAE TV.
In the search for beautiful people, music that moves, and real culture, America, there's only one LA Coast. Go Coast, Louisiana delivers the treasures of the Gulf fresh to you.
I think we need a bigger boat.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on LAE.
Welcome back. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We have a fantastic panel for you tonight. John DeShazier of NewOrleansSaints.com and also the radio analyst for the New Orleans Pelicans, along with Larry Holder of NOLA.com. And we'll shift gears in this second half hour, and we'll talk a little bit about the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, and, of course, the New Orleans Pelicans. And, guys, let's start with the Tigers. A big loss, obviously, at Georgia last week, and kind of exposed the Tigers a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. I'll start with you, John. Were you surprised, especially with the lack of pressure that LSU was able to put on with their down linemen and the confusion that we saw in the defensive backfield?
Well, I was shocked at the lack of pressure because one of the staples has been that their defensive line has been able to get after the opposing quarterback. I mean, we've gotten so accustomed to that, you expect that. I'm not totally shocked at what's happening in the secondary. They got young guys, number one. But number two, these heavy losses defensively, where you continue to lose all your seniors and all your best juniors, and you do that every year, at some point in time, it catches up to you. It appears that this season might be the season that's caught up to LSU finally, where they continue to lose so much talent. And they've got talent. It's just young talent.
Yes.
And if you put that young talent out against players who can play like Aaron Murray, he's going to figure you out. And, I mean, there seemed to be so much confusion in the Georgia game. I mean, a lot of it, you know, they were talking about communication. Some guys might be playing zone while the other guys are playing man. You know, I'm surprised from that standpoint because John Chavis has been wonderful at LSU. That's the one thing you've been able to count on up there is the defense. So, you know, you would like to believe that they're going to get it together sooner rather than later. But, you know, again, you've got young guys who are just, you know, kind of feeling their way. Hopefully they can figure it out pretty soon.
I think, obviously, what JD said, the draft has finally caught up with them. You lose so many players, it's just bound to happen. And to me, though, it's not necessarily just an LSU thing. I think the SEC as a whole, their defense, it's not as much of a calling card. I think Alabama's a little more susceptible than normal. But it didn't start for LSU in this Georgia game. I mean, Auburn, they were up big, and then all of a sudden you started seeing breakdowns, and the game was getting a little closer than maybe people thought. And I think it's just the way it's going to be for LSU when you're going up against teams like, say, Texas A&M with Johnny Football, with A.J. McCarron and Alabama. Look, they can throw it, and you're just going to have to get used to it. Just if you're an LSU fan, you're going to have to deal with this defense. But if you're an LSU fan, just be happy. You couldn't have really thought you were going to go through this season unscathed. Be happy that you lost early, you lost on the road, you lost to a team that's probably going to be a top 10 team, because if the LSU Tigers do want to have these aspirations to maybe win the SEC, and for some reason they can run the table and maybe get a national championship game, the loss happened early enough, and they can fix these problems against some more potent teams that they're going to be facing later on.
Guys, I think the thing that surprised me the most about Saturday was the lack of adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. We have become so accustomed to John Chavis adjusting and again, seeing maybe a total different scheme at times. And I don't know if it's the youth of this team, but we just didn't see that on Saturday.
Yeah, but some of that might be aptitude. Maybe these guys just can't learn it right now. I mean, maybe they just, well, for lack of better words, they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing very well, so they might not be able to adjust on the fly just yet. You hope during the season as they progress, you'll figure out what you do well, and you're able to at least do that well before you can move on to something else, because it didn't look like they did anything particularly well against Georgia.
Well, at least this happened against a good team. Because this happened against Auburn, and you get all these breakdowns, and you lose that game, that one really hurts. The fact that it happened against a top-tier quarterback, John Chavis was in the film room saying, look, guys, these are the breakdowns. We can't have this anymore, because I think what JD's saying, John Chavis, it's worked every year since he's been there, regardless of who's there, regardless of draft picks being taken away, people leaving for the NFL. I think they can fix this to a degree, maybe not all the way, but you just want to fix it to a degree, because I think you're going to be having shootouts every week with say, your big-time opponents, like I say, A&M, like I say, Alabama. They got good quarterbacks, and they're going to be throwing the ball all over the yard.
Will we see a simplification of the scheme, or again, will we, especially when it comes to pass rush,
maybe that's what it takes. Maybe that's what it takes. You scale back so guys can play faster and they can be more confident in what they're doing. Now, is that enough to carry you through? I don't know, but the way LSU is scoring right now, the way they're playing on offense, maybe you can give up 27-28 and you can still outscore people until you can kind of figure it out and get a little bit tighter on defense.
And also, why not just stick with one thing? I mean, play man-to-man the whole game. I mean,
play man-to-man and blitz.
It certainly lacks. It keeps it not as confusing.
Keeps it simple.
Keeps it simple.
Yes.
And as we've seen here in New Orleans, you keep it simple, and the defense with players that people thought weren't able to play, they're able to get it done. Yeah. But look, LSU's too talented. I think they can figure this thing out again to a degree. Is it going to get fixed all in 1 week? No, but they have time before they have really big-time opponents that can really hurt them offensively, because, let's see, they play Mississippi State this week.
Yes.
I don't see them being able to hurt them. You play Florida later. Their offense is really stagnant, and they're in trouble. So as long as you get it fixed, by the time you're facing Johnny Football, and by the time you're facing Alabama, you could be back in pretty good shape. And look, this LSU team is good enough to potentially win the West,
especially on offense.
But they got to get something out of that defensive line. I mean, there are no Kiki Mingos anymore, and those guys are gone. But they've got no Sam Montgomerys. But they've got to get something out of that line. I mean, they've got to be better. They didn't apply any pressure on Aaron Murray, and you would like to have seen what might have happened if they could have made him a little uncomfortable. And they weren't able to do that at all. And generally, that's what we've come to expect from LSU. They've got two guys on the end who can fly. They've got two guys in the middle who can collapse pockets, and they're quick and they're strong. And they didn't get any of that against Georgia. So, that line's got to give them more.
I would agree. Before we head to the phone lines at 504-866-3200, got to give kudos to Zach Mettenberger and that marvelous performance between the hedges. Really a tough spot for that kid, and the way he played was really unreal. John?
Cam Cameron has done, I've seen it all over the place, but he's done a wonderful work with Zach Mettenberger, because this is not the same kid from last year. This isn't close to being the same kid from last year. I mean, he's decisive. He's throwing the football. He's fitting it in. He's throwing people open, so to speak. And he's doing a great job of executing that offense. Even when they can't run, you can depend on him to get you something right now. And last year, you were terrified to put the ball game in his hands at all last year. Now, basically in Georgia, they put it in his hands and said, okay, big boy, here it is. Win it for us. And he just about, well, he should have done it. 41 points is enough. Okay, 41 is enough.
Especially if you're LSU, who's so used to being so great on defense.
Yeah.
You score 41 points, you should win every game in like the next 4 years. But Zach Mettenberger has finally been the quarterback that a lot of people, including myself, hyped him to be. And I think it's great for the program in general, but I was not really super high on Cam Cameron. I know a lot of people thought, wow, he's gonna come in and do this dynamic offense, and I just looked at what he did. You get fired from a team that won the Super Bowl. They say, get out of here. They'll bring in someone else, and they win the Super Bowl. So I wasn't super sold, but look, I'm going to give Les a lot of credit for going to get him, and Cam a lot of credit, and you got to give Mettenberger a ton of credit for not having his head rattled from last year and really playing well.
Well, and again, the trust factor now that we're seeing with Cam Cameron in the offense, which again reflects what we've seen with Chief on the defense. Miles kind of standing back and letting these guys do their work, and that's helped a tremendous amount.
Yeah, but I think Cameron might have learned something from that Baltimore experience. His problem in Baltimore was the lack of balance. He's got Ray Rice, and they're chucking the ball all over the field. When you give it to Ray Rice 20 to 25 times, they had a great record, but he wouldn't get it to him those 20 to 25 times. Now he gets to LSU, and he's got Jeremy Hill, and he's got Alfred Blue, and he's got McGee, and now and now it's okay. I've learned my lesson. I kind of figured this out. And if he wants to get back to the NFL, he better show that he's learned a lesson.
Let's head to the phone lines, 866-3200. Let's go to Ryan in Mid-City. Ryan, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
How y'all doing? How y'all doing today, man? I got two things I want to say. I think y'all giving too much credit to Georgia because hello?
Yeah, we're here.
You're here.
Yeah. I think y'all giving too much credit to Georgia. I think that muff punt by Beckham Jr., that cost us the game. I think by McGee not getting on that ball, we had stopped him on like the 25-yard line, and when that boy muffed that punt. When he muffed that punt, man, I think that took that changed that game around. And I think number 16, Roscoe, Anthony Johnson, all those boys, man, them boys got to get tougher, man. They just got to get tougher. And I listen to y'all. I just listen.
Ryan, thank you for the phone call, guys.
I agree that they've got to get tougher defensively. I mean, but I don't know how we're giving Georgia too much credit, because Aaron Murray is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and he's been throwing it up for years. I mean, there's a reason why him and Mettenberger were neck and neck when he was at Georgia. So I'm not saying that Georgia is no slouch. I mean, you can't say that.
Yeah, you got to properly credit him. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Murray threw for about 300 yards, and they ran for about 200 yards. Right. And, I mean, a lot of that is because of Georgia. Right. I mean, they've got two great running backs, Gurley and Marshall. They've got a great quarterback who's able to do something. He's been a 4-year starter, and he's going to finish as maybe the SEC's all-time leader in touchdown passes and passing yards. So he's no slouch. So, yeah, LSU needs to get tougher on defense, but Georgia's got to take some of the credit for making them look soft.
And also the Beckham point, is it a key play in the game? Yes. Did it change the momentum? Yes. It's not the only reason why they lost. I mean, is it a key? Yes. But when you're scoring 41 points, the defense has got to stop somebody. It's still, they gave up. They would have, if they didn't score, they would have given up, 37 points? I mean, that's way too much for a defense that you figure is perennially stout.
And a blessing that Gurley went out when he did, because he was ripping up the Tiger defense. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but then his backup comes in and he's doing pretty much the same. Now, Gurley might have ended up with 200 yards as opposed to, them splitting it for 170 or 80 or whatever. So, they just didn't do a very good job defensively at all that entire game. And a lot of that, you need to get tougher. But, you got to give the other team some credit, because, I mean, they're not out there playing against the air.
To Slidell and Carl. Carl, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, hello. I tell you, I totally agree with what y'all saying. My question is this: John Chavis, he didn't even. I didn't see blitz one time in that game, and I was wondering, did I miss it, or he just didn't do it? I was wondering, what is your take on that?
Carl, thank you for the phone call.
That's something they probably should have done.
Right.
In hindsight, and maybe going on in the future, that's probably something they're going to do. Because, Aaron Murray was able to stand back there and just pick them apart, no problem. And you can't have someone who is that good, that comfortable. And that's certainly something, especially when you're not getting it from the front four. You got to change some things up, and that didn't happen. And that's to me is probably the one that's on you, Coach Chavis.
Yeah,
you should have dialed it up a little bit.
Yeah, that would be the disappointing thing, because even if he completes the pass, even if he's able to get it off, if you can hit him a few times, you get him thinking about being hit, and that's the main thing. You get the guy uncomfortable. He was too comfortable in the pocket, and they never got any pressure on him. And certainly, if you get a guy like that and he gets into a rhythm, he's going to be tough to stop. He's home. He's got the crowd on his side. He's got a great running game. So he's going to be tough to stop. Now, Chavis might have been a little terrified to blitz him because his guys weren't covering anybody anyway. Yes. But the results they were getting says, okay, we're not covering. We might as well blitz. So you can look at it from both standpoints. Either I'm terrified and I want to get everybody in the secondary back there covering, or we've got everybody back there covering and we're still not doing anything, so let's go ahead and blitz.
John, we've got you here tonight, and I really want to talk a little bit about the New Orleans Pelicans. I got to tell you, folks, I'm excited about the new additions. I really think that this is going to be a really good year for this team. And John, you have a chance to see them a little bit. Obviously, you're the radio analyst. Let's start first of all with Anthony Davis. I watched him in Las Vegas with the USA team, and you saw right then and there that he was bigger and stronger and more mature. And your thoughts on Davis and his maturation process?
You know what, AD, you hate to put this kind of pressure on a guy because he's 20 years old, but he seems to have star all over him. I mean, there are things he can do that you can't teach, and now he's got a traditional point guard, and that's not to knock Gravis Vasquez. I mean, sure. Gravis was not, but AD is a guy who at this point in time in his career can outrun most guards in the league. And if you got a point guard who can push it, who can get it to him in traffic, who's willing to get in the middle of the break and navigate and catch him as a trailer, now you make life easier for him. He still doesn't have that bulk to where he's going to be able to hold position on the post and drop step and shoot jump hooks and those kinds of things. But he's so effective just running the floor, and he's got a nice face-up jumper, and he's gaining that natural strength. He's 230 now. I think last season Coach Monty Williams said he finished at 212. Mm-hmm. 212, playing power forward in the NBA. Can't do it. But he's 230 now. If he holds that, and there's going to be some attrition during the season, but if he holds it and maybe finishes up at 220 or so, he's going to gain weight naturally. He's only 20 years old, and he's in New Orleans, and as a guy who you can see on camera, you're going to gain something.
Hey, check it out. You know what I'm
saying? But he is such a fantastic player. I think he's got a lot of skills. He's going to be able to hold people better defensively. He's going to be able to hold his position. He's a great weak side shot blocker. So all the things that make him special will be enhanced by the addition of Drew Holiday, because Drew Holiday is going to make life so much easier for him. AD is the kind. There were times last year where we were saying, you know what, AD is the kind of guy, if you can just get it to the rim, he's going to go get it. He'll be able to get those 2 or 3 lobs a game, those easy points that you see, the Clippers maximizing with Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. Those are the plays he can make.
And you can spread the floor out now because of the other players you have.
You can spread the floor. You've got shooters out there. You got Anthony Morrow. You've got EG when he's healthy. You've got guys who can put Ryan Anderson. Right. I do not want to forget Ryan Anderson. So now you can space the floor. You create those lanes where guys can drive one-on-one. I'm telling you, there's a lot of potential for this team.
I also feel like it's not all on Anthony Davis. Yes. A lot of people put the comparison. He's the best prospect coming out since LeBron. Mm-hmm. And in Cleveland, it's all on LeBron. Everything was on him, and that team was only going to go as far as he's going to take them. Now, I'm not saying this Pelican team is going to go make the NBA Finals this year or next year, but I think the fact it's going to help him flourish that it's not all on him. And that you've got some guys who are hungry. I mean, a lot of these guys, you bring up Tyreek Evans, you bring up Drew Holiday. These guys haven't been on playoff teams. I think you get all these guys together, young, ready, and Monty Williams is probably, to me, that perfect coach to mold all these guys. There's a reason why he's Team USA, to mold all these young players. I think that is going to help, it's just going to help him mature and be the player he most likely wants to be, rather than doing too much. He's got that supporting cast, and at times some of those guys can take over games.
I would agree. And John, the big question right now is going to be small forward. Who's going to play the small forward? Obviously, Tyreek Evans is going to play some small forward as well, but he'll be going back and forth between obviously the 2 and the 3. Your thoughts on the small forward position and who fills that void?
Well, Aminu's going to do it. Farouk Aminu's going to start there. Now, Tyreek Evans is going to come off the bench as the small forward, I guess, and probably finish games in a 3-guard offense, but he'll be playing the small forward slot, really. I guess you can call it 3 guards. But Farouk Aminu's going to be the starter there. And there were moments last year where he showed flashes where if he stays within his abilities, run the floor hard, rebound, defend, he'll put up lines like 13 points and 9 rebounds and 2 steals. He could have those games regularly if he remains, they call it in his box. Mm-hmm. If he does the things he's capable of doing, because he's kind of freakish athletically. You don't see it all the time, but every now and again he'll unfurl it in the game and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? He's got that. He's just got to put it out all the time.
And I do think, and Larry, I'd like you to comment, I do think the up-tempo style will help him. You're going to see a different style than what we saw with this team last year. With Drew Holiday at the point guard position, it is going to be more of an up-tempo game.
Yeah, it'll benefit him greatly. That would be the game that would favor him. Up and down, up and down, up and down, because that way you don't get into a set offense. He's not the most effective guy in a set offense. He doesn't have a great outside, great perimeter jumper. He's not a guy who's a one-on-one slasher. But if you can get him in open space, that's where he creates the most trouble. And that's exactly what Monty Williams wants to get to this year. He wants this team to defend and create turnovers and get stops, get rebounds, and get on the break.
I'm curious to see how early on you say Monty Williams, of course, wants this up-tempo offense, and yet he wants the focus always to be on defense. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's been his calling card, really, since he's gotten here. I'm curious to see how early they can adapt to that. On one end, playing so high up-tempo offense, and because Monty Williams, he doesn't have any hair to pull out, but he would pull his hair out if he has defensive breakdowns.
Oh, no doubt.
So I'm curious to see, when you throw in all these pieces together, how it comes together early, and because to me, it's still going to be a work in progress with all these new parts trying to mold and gel together. But that's to me what I'm going to watch for early in the season. You've got individual talent, gel them all together to play what Monty wants, up-tempo offense, and yet be stout on defense, because a lot of times that doesn't happen. Like I just remember, say the Suns when they were scoring 140 points with Steve Nash, and then they're giving up 120.
Yeah, but he's got guys who. 3 in the starting lineup, and potentially 4, who either already are stout defenders or can be. Drew Holiday is a great defender.
Yes.
And he's where you need him to be, on ball. So he harasses the opposing point guard. Now, Aminu can defend when so inclined, I think. He's got the long arms and the athleticism. AD is a fantastic defender.
Tyreek Evans
is a nice defender. And also, let's not forget Greg Steemsma, who came over from Boston, is a solid defender.
Shot blocker.
Yeah, he's a nice shot blocker, and you're going to need that weak side help. So you get these guys, and all of a sudden, your guards can play more aggressive because they know they've got that backside help. Now, you don't want to live off that, because if you live off that, you're compromising your bigs. But from time to time, you can press out on those guys on the perimeter and take away those threes, make them into drivers, because you've got AD and Steemsma behind them to kind of pick up your slack. Now, the thing is, now everybody's got to crash the boards. Everybody's got to get in and rebound, and that's what Monty wants. He wants to get those stops, get those rebounds, then run. I think he said the bad boy Pistons, who you thought of were, he said at one point they averaged like 106 points. So you can do it. Now you got to dedicate yourself to it. Every NBA team comes in every season saying, we want to run. Everybody does. But most players don't want to put in the dedication to run because running takes getting in shape. Right. And most of these guys don't want to run as hard as they say they want to run. So we'll see. But if they defend, and that's your reward for defending, we can run.
Less than a minute left. One word answer if I could, guys. Is this a playoff team?
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to say yes.
And I'm going to say
yes.
And I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say at number 8 or so, but I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say yes as well. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. Just absolutely fabulous to have you guys on the panel tonight. Really enjoyed having you with us. And also want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program at 10 o'clock on Friday right here on WLAE. You can also catch me on the radio at WGSO 990 AM, weekdays 11 a.m. until 1 p.m., on Twitter at Eric_Asher, and on the web at ericasher.com. Special thanks to the WLAE production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, my producer, William Hill, and of course, thanks to these guys for coming in tonight and joining us on the panel. We'll do it all over again next week, 6 o'clock right here on WLAE. New Orleans, have a great evening, and we'll see you right back here next Thursday night for Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation.